Chapter 1, The Perfect Problem. Sabrina Crawford liked to believe she wasn't the kind of woman who obsessed over timelines. She told herself this as she stared at her untouched mimosa, condensation pooling at the base of the flute, the orange juice separating slightly from the champagne. Across the table, her parents were quietly engaged in the complicated ritual of dividing a shared plate of blueberry pancakes, without either of them feeling shortchanged. Her Aunt Kelly, impeccably dressed and effortlessly relaxed, leaned back in her chair and people watched through the restaurant's wide windows like brunch was a sport she had mastered years ago. This was supposed to be easy, pleasant, a normal Sunday brunch. Instead, Sabrina felt like her chest was too tight for the floral dress she'd chosen, like the question she'd been carrying for 5 months was pressing upward, determined to be asked whether she invited it or not. Her phone buzzed beside her plate. "Charlie, hope brunch is good. Call me later." She smiled automatically, thumb hovering, then set the phone face down. Charlie Brinks was a good man. A great one, actually. Quiet in a way that felt solid, not withdrawn. Competent without being arrogant. He remembered to check the tire pressure, booked reservations in advance, and never once made her feel like an afterthought. He showed up to birthdays, to work events, to Sunday dinners with her parents where he helped her dad clear the table without being asked. She loved him. She was certain of that in a way that felt calm, not dramatic. Which was exactly why she didn't understand why he wouldn't talk about the future. They'd been together 2 years. Lived together for 1. Shared grocery lists and weekend routines and inside jokes about the neighbor's dog. Sabrina could see it. Marriage, kids, a life that felt steady and warm. But every time she nudged the conversation forward, Charlie responded with vague optimism. "We're good, aren't we? Or I'm not in a rush. Or the worst one, we'll get there." Where was there? "Sabrina," her mother said gently. "You've been very quiet." Her father looked up from the pancakes. "That's usually a sign you're about to say something." Aunt Kelly turned, one perfectly shaped eyebrow lifting. "Or explode." Sabrina laughed despite herself. "I'm fine." The lie barely made it past her lips. Kelly tilted her head. "You sure? Because you've had that look since the server took our order. The one you used to get when you were deciding whether to dye your hair red in college." "I looked great with red hair," Sabrina said. "You cried for a week," her dad replied. Sabrina exhaled, the tension cracking just enough. And once it did, the words rushed in to fill the space. "Why hasn't he talked about marriage yet?" The table went still. Her mom set her fork down carefully. Her dad leaned back. Kelly's attention sharpened instantly, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "I mean," Sabrina continued quickly, cheeks warming, "we've been together 2 years. We're happy. We do everything together. He comes to family dinners. He talks about the future in general, just not specifically. And I don't want to pressure him, but I also don't want to waste time if we're not on the same page." No one interrupted her. She told them about the trips Charlie planned, the dinners he cooked after long workdays, the way he listened when she talked about her job. She told them she loved him, that she believed he loved her too. "I just don't understand what's holding him back," she finished. "I've gone over everything. I don't see a reason." Silence settled over the table, heavier now. Her dad was the first to speak. "What do you do for him?" Sabrina blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said evenly, "what do you bring to his life?" Her irritation flared. "I support him." He nodded. "How?" "I'm there for him when he needs me." Her mother leaned forward slightly. "Has he ever needed you?" The defensiveness surged fast. "Of course he has. I'm not saying he doesn't want you," her mom cut in gently. "I'm asking if he's ever actually asked for your help with something." Sabrina opened her mouth, closed it. She searched her memory, real examples, not feelings. Times Charlie had leaned on her, depended on her, needed her to step in. Nothing surfaced. Her dad watched her carefully. "So you offer him something he doesn't need or want." The words stung because they were delivered without judgment. "Have you ever asked him what he needs from you?" he continued. The simplicity of it hit her like a slap. No, she hadn't. She'd assumed. She'd waited. She'd positioned herself as supportive and loving and agreeable and hoped that would be enough. Her cheeks burned. Aunt Kelly finally spoke. "You're not a little girl anymore, Sabrina." Sabrina met her gaze. "You want an adult future," Kelly continued, "but you've been a bystander in your own relationship, waiting for him to decide when it starts." "That's not fair," Sabrina said weakly. "Maybe not," Kelly said calmly. "But if I had to bet, I'd guess he hasn't talked about the future because he hasn't met the version of you he'd be proud to call his wife." The words landed with brutal precision. Sabrina stared at the table, at the rings on her mother's hand, at the faint coffee stain near her plate. For the first time in months, her confusion shifted, uncomfortable clarity replacing it. She hadn't been rejected. She hadn't been chosen yet. And somehow that felt worse. Chapter 2, The Mirror. Sabrina didn't remember the drive home from brunch. She knew she had made it. Her keys were on the counter, her shoes kicked off by the door, but the in-between had vanished, swallowed by the echo of her aunt's voice and the unbearable clarity of her father's questions. "What do you do for him?" The apartment was quiet in that particular way that made her acutely aware of herself. Charlie wouldn't be home for another hour. Sunday afternoons were his gym time, the one habit he never skipped, not even for her. She dropped onto the couch and stared at the ceiling. A bystander. The word needled at her. Felt unfair, reductive, almost insulting. She wasn't passive. She worked hard. She showed up. She loved him loudly and consistently. She was present. But presence, she was starting to realize, wasn't the same thing as participation. Her phone buzzed again. Charlie, leg day is trying to kill me. You survive brunch? She smiled, reflexive and fond. Her thumbs hovered. Sabrina, barely. My aunt came for my soul. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Charlie, that tracks. Want takeout tonight? There it was. The familiar rhythm. He suggested. She agreed. Her fingers stalled over the keyboard. Sabrina, actually no. She deleted it. Sabrina, yeah, sounds good. She tossed the phone onto the couch like it had betrayed her. The apartment reflected them perfectly. His bookshelf was organized by subject and height. Hers was aesthetic chaos. He kept the kitchen stocked with staples. She bought specialty ingredients for recipes she tried once. Their life worked because Charlie made it work, and she followed along grateful and content. Or at least she'd thought she was. Sabrina stood abruptly and went into the bedroom, pulling open her closet with more force than necessary. She stared at her clothes, suddenly seeing them differently. Not bad, not sloppy, just safe. Everything chosen to blend into a life already in motion. She sank onto the edge of the bed. What does he need from me? The question felt foreign, like trying on a new language and realizing you'd never learned the grammar. She'd never asked because she assumed she already knew. Love, support, affection, agreement. Agreement was easy. Agreement required nothing. The front door clicked open an hour later. Charlie's footsteps were familiar enough that she could picture him without looking. The way he toed off his shoes, the pause as he checked the mail, the soft exhale as he finally relaxed. Sabs? He called. In here, she answered. He appeared in the doorway, gym bag slung over his shoulder, hair damp, cheeks flushed. He smiled when he saw her, and the knot in her chest tightened painfully. Hey, he said, leaning down to kiss her. You okay? Yeah, she said too quickly. Just tired. He studied her for a second longer, then nodded. I'll shower. Thai or burgers? She opened her mouth, then stopped. What did she want? Thai, she said, but from the place on Wilshire. And I'll order. Charlie blinked, just once. Okay, he said easily. I'll grab the wine. It was nothing, barely a moment, but something in his tone shifted. Not surprise exactly, but interest. Sabrina felt a strange, fleeting jolt of satisfaction. She ordered confidently, even added an appetizer without consulting him. When he came out of the shower, towel around his neck, she told him what she'd chosen. Nice, he said. Good call. They ate at the counter, knees brushing. Charlie talked about work, about a project that was dragging longer than expected. Sabrina listened, really listened, not just nodding but asking questions. Specific ones. Why is it stalled? She asked. He shrugged. Client keeps changing scope. That's frustrating, she said. Have you pushed back? Charlie paused mid-bite. Not yet. Why not? He considered it. I guess I don't want to rock the boat. She tilted her head. But you're already doing extra work. Isn't that worse? He laughed quietly. When did you get so strategic? She smiled, unsure how to answer. Later, curled together on the couch. The quiet stretched comfortably between them. Sabrina's heart thudded loudly in her ears. Ask him. The thought repeated like a dare. What do you need from me? She blurted. Charlie turned to her, eyebrows knitting. What? She winced. Smooth. Very smooth. I mean, she tried again slower. In general. In our relationship. He studied her now, careful and thoughtful in a way that made her nervous. Did something happen at brunch? He asked. She hesitated. Honesty felt heavier than avoidance. We talked about us, she said. About the future. He didn't stiffen. Didn't pull away. But something closed just slightly. And I realized I've never actually asked you what you need from me, she said. I just assumed. Charlie leaned back against the couch, considering. I don't know, he said finally. Support, I guess. Her chest sank. Of course. She'd known that answer. But, she asked gently. He glanced at her, surprised. But, you paused. Charlie sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't want this to turn into a thing. It already is, she said softly. At least for me. He looked at her for a long moment, weighing something. I need a partner, he said finally. Not someone who waits for me to decide everything. The words landed, not cruel but firm. I don't mind leading, he continued. I just don't want to feel like I'm dragging someone behind me. Sabrina swallowed. You think I do that? I think you let me, he said. And sometimes it feels lonely. The room felt too quiet. I didn't know, she whispered. I know, he said, reaching for her hand. That's the problem. They sat like that for a while, fingers intertwined, the truth hanging between them, unresolved but finally visible. Later that night, when Charlie was asleep, Sabrina stared at the dark ceiling again. But this time, the question had changed. It wasn't why won't he choose me? It was who have I been waiting to become? Chapter 3. Asking the wrong questions. Sabrina woke up Monday morning with the distinct and unsettling sensation that she had been handed a map without a legend. The conversation with Charlie replayed itself as she brushed her teeth, as she pulled on slacks, as she waited for the coffee maker to finish sputtering into life. I need a partner. Sometimes it feels lonely. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't accused. He'd simply stated a truth he'd apparently been carrying for a while, which meant this wasn't a crisis. It was worse. It was a pattern. She sat at the small kitchen table with her laptop open, pretending to scroll through emails while actually staring at the same sentence over and over. Her reflection in the darkened screen looked unfamiliar. Alert, a little anxious, like someone who just realized the rules of a game had changed mid-play. She was determined not to be a bystander anymore. The problem was, she had no idea how to stop. By lunchtime, she'd come up with a plan that felt bold and proactive and, in hindsight, deeply misguided. She texted Charlie. Sabrina. Random question. Do you feel fulfilled? She stared at the screen, pulse quickening. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Charlie, in general or? Sabrina, in life, with me, with work, just curious. There was a longer pause this time. Charlie, I mean yeah, mostly. Why? Smooth, she thought. Very natural. Sabrina, no reason, just checking in. She immediately regretted the emoji. Charlie didn't respond. She spent the rest of the afternoon jumping every time her phone buzzed, each notification a small jolt of dread. When 5 o'clock finally arrived, she left work feeling like she'd already failed a test she hadn't studied for. That evening, she tried again. They were cooking together. Well, Charlie was cooking, and Sabrina was chopping vegetables with exaggerated focus. The kitchen smelled like garlic and olive oil, warm and familiar. So, she said casually, what are your long-term goals? Charlie glanced over. Career-wise. Sure, she said. And, personally. He smiled faintly. This feels like a performance review. She laughed too quickly. Does it? A little, he said. Is this about brunch? She hesitated. Not exactly. He went back to stirring the sauce. Okay. What motivates you? She asked. He stopped stirring. Sabrina, he said carefully. What's going on? She leaned against the counter, heart racing. I'm just trying to be more involved. Involved how? By asking questions, she said. About you. He studied her, expression thoughtful but guarded. You've always asked about me. Yes, but, she struggled. Not like this. He nodded slowly. Okay, then answer me this. What do you want? The question caught her off guard. I what? What do you want? He repeated. Right now. In general. She opened her mouth and realized, with a sudden flash of embarrassment, that she didn't have a clear answer. I want us to be good, she said finally. Charlie's jaw tightened just a fraction. We are good, he said. That's not an answer. She felt the familiar urge to smooth things over, to agree, to retreat. Instead, she forced herself to stay put. I want to be someone you can rely on, she said. He exhaled. You already are. But not the way you mean, she said quietly. The silence stretched. I don't need you to interrogate me, Charlie said at last. If that's what this is. Her shoulders slumped. I'm messing this up. Yeah, he said gently. A little. She laughed weakly. I thought asking more questions would help. Not if they're the wrong ones, he said. She looked at him, really looked, at the faint crease between his brows, the way he'd set the spoon down and turned fully toward her. He wasn't angry. He was tired. What are the right ones? She asked. Charlie considered her for a long moment. Try this, he said. What do you want to take responsibility for? The question landed differently, heavier, more specific. I don't know, she admitted. That's okay, he said. But that's the conversation I've been waiting for. They finished cooking in a quieter rhythm. The tension didn't vanish, but it softened, reshaping itself into something workable. Over dinner, Charlie talked about a decision at work he'd been putting off, whether to push for a leadership role that would mean longer hours but more influence. Normally, Sabrina would have nodded sympathetically and told him she supported whatever he chose. Instead, she asked, what's stopping you? He shrugged. Risk, I guess. Do you want it? She pressed. Yes, he said immediately, then blinked. I think so. Then why are you waiting? She asked. He frowned. I'm not waiting. She held his gaze. You are. You're just better at justifying it. Something like surprise flickered across his face. That's unfair, he said. Is it? She asked. He leaned back, considering. No, he admitted. It's not. She felt a strange, unfamiliar steadiness settle in her chest. Later that night, as they got ready for bed, Charlie paused in the doorway. I appreciate that you're trying, he said. I don't want to try, she said. I want to do it right. He smiled slightly. Then stop treating this like a problem to solve. What should I treat it like? She asked. A partnership, he said. That means showing me who you are, not just reacting to who I am. After he fell asleep, Sabrina lay awake again. But this time, her thoughts weren't spiraling. They were circling something sharper, clearer. She realized she'd spent years defining herself by how well she fit into other people's lives, by how agreeable she was, how easy. She'd been asking Charlie what he needed without first deciding what she was willing to give. And those weren't the same thing at all. By morning, she knew one thing for certain. If she wanted to be chosen, she couldn't keep auditioning. She was going to have to step on stage and claim a role, whether Charlie followed or not. Chapter 4, Becoming Useful. Sabrina decided, quietly, without ceremony, that she was done waiting for confidence to arrive before she acted. If she waited to feel ready, she would remain exactly where she was, thoughtful, agreeable, and invisible in all the ways that mattered. So instead, she made a different choice. She started moving first and letting the feeling catch up later. It began on Tuesday with a calendar. Charlie kept their shared digital calendar immaculate, color-coded, labeled, predictable. Sabrina had always treated it like a bulletin board, something to glance at, never touch. That morning, she opened it deliberately. She added a dinner reservation for Friday night at a new place she'd been meaning to try. She didn't ask. She didn't caveat. She simply added it and sent Charlie an invite. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. Charlie, oh, nice. I didn't know about this place. Sabrina, you do now. A pause. Charlie, looking forward to it. She set the phone down, heart racing like she just jumped off something high. At work, she carried that same energy with her. When her manager asked for volunteers to take the lead on a client presentation, Sabrina's hand went up before she could overthink it. She felt the familiar rush of panic, but underneath it was something steadier, a sense of ownership. This is mine, she thought. I can do this. That evening, Charlie came home later than usual, shoulders tight, jaw set in a way Sabrina recognized distress. Normally, she would have asked how his day was, offered sympathy, and waited for him to decompress on his own timetable. Instead, she said, "You look wiped." He sighed. "Client call ran long." "Sit," she said, gesturing to the couch. "I'll grab you water." He blinked. "Okay." She returned with water and sat beside him, not touching yet, giving him space. "Tell me what happened," she said. He talked. About scope creep. About an email he wished he'd worded differently. About the leadership role that hovered just out of reach, heavy with implication. Sabrina listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "You're letting them drive because you're afraid of pushing too hard." He frowned. "I wouldn't put it like that." "I would," she said calmly. "And I think you're right to want more control." He studied her. "Since when do you have opinions about my work?" She met his gaze. "Since I stopped assuming you didn't want them." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was thoughtful. "What would you do?" he asked. The question startled her. Not because it was unexpected, but because it wasn't. "I'd set boundaries," she said. "And I'd document the changes. You're doing extra labor for free." He nodded slowly. "That's actually helpful." She smiled. Felt different than before. Less like approval. More like recognition. Over the next few days, Sabrina kept going. She took charge of groceries, planning meals for the week without running every choice past Charlie. She handled a maintenance issue with the landlord that she'd previously left to him, navigating the frustrating phone tree with surprising patience. When Charlie noticed, he didn't comment right away. That somehow mattered more. Friday night arrived quickly. Sabrina dressed with intention, choosing something that felt like herself, not softened, not curated for anyone else's expectations. When they arrived at the restaurant, she gave her name confidently and led them to the table. Charlie looked around appreciatively. "Good pick." "Thank you," she said, not deflecting. Over dinner, the conversation flowed easily. They laughed. They teased. The undercurrent of tension that had followed them for weeks seemed to have shifted. Less brittle, more curious. Halfway through dessert, Charlie said, "You seem different." She held his gaze. "Different how?" "More present," he said. "Not just here, but engaged." She nodded. "I am." "Why?" he asked, not accusing. Just asking. She considered the question carefully. "Because I realized I was waiting for permission to matter." He was quiet for a long moment. "I never meant to make you feel like that," he said. "I know," she replied. "That's why it was so easy to do." The honesty hung between them, clean and sharp. That night, as they got ready for bed, Charlie watched her from the doorway. "I like this version of you," he said. She turned, toothbrush in hand. "This version. The one who doesn't disappear into me," he said. She smiled. "She's not new. She's just been quiet." The next test came sooner than she expected. On Sunday morning, Charlie mentioned casually that his sister was hosting a last-minute family dinner the following weekend. He was already assuming they'd go. Normally, Sabrina would have agreed automatically, rearranging her plans without thought. Instead, she said, I can't. He paused. You can't. I already committed to helping a friend move, she said. I can come by later, but I won't cancel. He studied her face, searching for apology. Finding none. Okay, he said finally. I'll tell her. There was no argument, no tension, just a recalibration. Later that night, Charlie sat beside her on the couch, quieter than usual. Can I tell you something? He asked. She nodded. I think part of why I've been hesitant about the future, he said slowly, is because I couldn't picture what it would look like with you standing next to me, not behind me. Her chest tightened, not with hurt, but with something like relief. And now? She asked. I'm starting to see it, he said. And it's different. She smiled softly. Good different. He smiled back. Yeah, good different. When he went to bed, Sabrina stayed up a little longer, sitting in the quiet of the living room. She thought about her aunt's words, about pride, about partnership. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was proving anything. She was simply showing up. And that, finally, felt like enough. Chapter 5, the version of herself, the first real setback arrived disguised as a compliment. Charlie said it on a Thursday night, casually, like it wasn't a sentence that would lodge itself in Sabrina's chest and refuse to leave. I'm glad you're handling more lately, he said, rinsing a plate at the sink. It takes a lot off my plate. The words were reasonable, appreciative even, but Sabrina heard something else underneath them. Takes it off my plate, not our plate. She smiled anyway. I'm happy to. And she was mostly. She liked the feeling of competence, of contribution. She liked seeing Charlie relax when she stepped in. But later, lying in bed with the lights off, she felt the old pattern tugging at her heels. Was she becoming useful because she wanted to be equal, or because she wanted to be chosen? The distinction mattered more than she wanted to admit. By Saturday morning, the question had followed her into her plans with Aunt Kelly. They were meeting for coffee at a small place Kelly loved. Minimalist, overpriced, full of people who looked like they owned at least one startup. Kelly arrived precisely on time, sunglasses perched in her hair, posture effortless as always. You look different, she said instead of hello. Sabrina snorted. Is that your thing now? Just emotionally clocking me on sight. Kelly smiled. It's always been my thing. Sit, they ordered. Kelly didn't ask about Charlie right away, which Sabrina appreciated and resented in equal measure. I've been changing things, Sabrina said finally, stirring her coffee too hard, being more proactive, more decisive. Kelly nodded. And it's working, Sabrina said. Mostly. He's noticing. He's responding. But, Kelly prompted. But I can't tell if I'm becoming a partner, Sabrina said. Or just a more impressive supporting character. Kelly leaned back, considering her. What does that mean to you? Sabrina hesitated. It means I'm still defining myself in relation to him. What he needs. What makes things easier. What makes him see me differently. Kelly's gaze sharpened, not unkindly. And what do you need? The question landed squarely between them. I don't know, Sabrina admitted. That's the problem. Kelly reached across the table and tapped Sabrina's wrist lightly. That's not a problem. That's a starting line. Sabrina sighed. I just don't want to mess this up. We're closer than we've been in months. Ah, Kelly said softly. There it is. There what is? The fear, Kelly said. You're still moving like someone who thinks love is something you earn. Sabrina's throat tightened. Isn't it? No, Kelly said firmly. Respect is earned. Trust is built. Love is chosen. Repeatedly. But if you're changing only to be more lovable, you'll disappear again. Just in a more impressive costume. Sabrina stared into her coffee. What if, she asked quietly, I become someone I like, and he doesn't follow? Kelly didn't hesitate. Then you won't have lost anything worth keeping. The truth of it hit harder than any criticism. Kelly softened. You can't grow with one foot braced against abandonment. That's not growth. That's negotiation. They sat in silence for a moment, the noise of the cafe filling the gaps. What would it look like? Kelly continued. If you define the version of yourself you want to be, independent of him? Sabrina closed her eyes. She pictured her life without filtering every choice through how it fit into Charlie's orbit. The image was blurry, but there were shapes there. Decisions she'd postponed, risks she'd rationalized away. I'd stop waiting, she said slowly. For cues. For permission. For reassurance. Kelly smiled. Good. Start there. The opportunity came sooner than expected. On Monday afternoon, Sabrina's manager stopped by her desk. Hey, she said. The client loved your presentation last week. We're putting together a small task force for the next phase. I'd like you to lead it. Sabrina's first instinct was panic. Her second was to think of how it would affect Charlie, the hours, the stress, the rebalancing of routines. Then she remembered Kelly's voice. Stop negotiating. I'd love to, Sabrina said. That night, she told Charlie over dinner. That's great, he said immediately. Congrats. It's a bigger time commitment, she added. At least for a few months. He nodded. We'll figure it out. Something in his tone, easy, unbothered, made her chest loosen. Later, though, as they got ready for bed, he asked, "Are you sure you want to take that on right now?" The old Sabrina would have backtracked instantly. The new one paused. "Yes," she said. "I do." He studied her, then smiled. "Okay." No argument. No tension. But the real test came the following week. Charlie got the leadership role. He came home buzzing with energy, talking fast, already mentally rearranging his schedule. Sabrina listened, genuinely happy for him. "So things might be a little hectic for a while," he said. "But it's temporary." She nodded. "Mine too." He blinked. "Yours?" She told him about the increased responsibility, the late meetings, the pressure. "I didn't realize it would overlap like that," he said slowly. "It will," she said. "But we'll manage." There it was again, He smiled, but there was uncertainty behind it. That night, after he fell asleep, Sabrina lay awake, not spiraling this time, but thinking. She thought about how easy it would be to soften her edges again, to downplay her ambitions so they fit neatly beside his, to reassure him that she would still bend. She also thought about how tired she was of bending. The next morning, she made a decision. She emailed her manager with a clear plan for the task force. She blocked off time in her calendar, non-negotiable time, for herself. She signed up for a certification she'd been postponing for over a year. She didn't frame any of it as compromise. When she told Charlie, she didn't apologize. "I'm proud of you," he said after a moment. "I know," she replied. And she was of him, yes, but also of herself. That evening, Sabrina caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She looked the same, but something behind her eyes had shifted, steadier, clearer. She finally understood what Kelly meant. The version of herself she was becoming wasn't designed to be impressive. She was designed to be real. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid of what that might cost her, because she finally knew what it was worth. Chapter 6, The Fight. The fight didn't arrive loudly. It crept in on a Wednesday night, trailing exhaustion and unspoken expectations, disguised as logistics. Charlie was late. Again. Sabrina sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, calendar spread across the screen like a map she was trying to read in the dark. Her task force meeting had run long. His leadership call had overlapped it by an hour. Dinner, something she'd planned, cooked and timed, had gone cold. When the front door finally opened, she didn't look up right away. "Hey," Charlie said, voice tired but light. "Sorry. It ran over." "I figured," she replied. He dropped his bag by the door and paused, sensing the shift. "You okay?" "Yes," she said. Then, after a beat, "No." He exhaled slowly and moved farther into the room. "Talk to me." She closed her laptop, deliberately, and turned to face him. "I need you to stop assuming I'll absorb everything." His brow furrowed. "I'm not assuming." "You are," she said, keeping her voice steady. "You assumed I'd keep dinner warm. You assumed I'd rearrange my meeting if yours went long. You assumed I'd be fine." He crossed his arms, not defensively, but protectively. "I thought we were both slammed right now." "We are," she agreed. "Which is why we need to talk about how we handle it." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay." The calmness of his response almost threw her off. She'd braced for resistance. Instead, she felt something else rising, months of restraint finally asking to be acknowledged. "I don't want to feel like I'm auditioning anymore," she said. "I don't want to be impressive or helpful or low maintenance just so things run smoothly." Charlie's jaw tightened. "I never asked you to be low maintenance." "No," she said. "You just got used to me being that way." Silence filled the kitchen, thick but not volatile. "I've been carrying things," she continued. "Not because you can't, but because I thought that's what partnership meant. Making myself smaller so there's room for you." His eyes flickered. "That's not what I want." "I know," she said. "But it's what I thought you needed." He leaned back against the counter, rubbing a hand over his face. "Sabrina, I don't want to fight." "I don't either," she said. "But I need you to hear this." He nodded. "I'm listening." She took a breath. "When you told me you needed a partner, it hurt. But it also woke me up. And I stepped up, not to save us, but because I needed to know who I was when I wasn't just reacting to you." "And?" he asked quietly. "And I like her," she said. "I like making decisions. I like having ambition that doesn't bend around yours. I like not apologizing for taking up space." He watched her closely. "I'm glad. But," she added, "if that only works when it makes your life easier, then we're still not equals." The words landed hard. Charlie straightened. "You think I only like this version of you because it benefits me?" "I think you're still adjusting," she said carefully. "And so am I. But I don't want to trade one imbalance for another." He was quiet for a long time. "When I said I needed a partner," he said finally, "I meant someone who would stand with me, not compete with me." "I'm not competing," she said. "I'm existing." He flinched slightly. "That's not fair, isn't it?" she asked. "When you asked if I was sure about my promotion, did you ask because you were concerned? Or because it complicated things? His mouth opened, closed. I didn't mean. I know, she said. Intent isn't the same as impact. The air between them felt charged now, but not angry. Honest. I've been scared, Charlie admitted, of what happens when we're both stretched. When neither of us can default to being the strong one. Sabrina's expression softened. That's exactly why this matters. He looked at her, really looked at her. Not as his girlfriend, not as the familiar presence in his life, but as a woman standing firmly in her own choices. I don't want to lose us, he said. I don't either, she replied. But I won't lose myself to keep us comfortable. That did it. The last thread of avoidance snapped. I didn't propose because I was afraid, Charlie said, the words tumbling out at last. Not because I didn't love you, but because I wasn't sure what we were building. Her chest tightened. What do you mean? I saw a future where I was always the one steering, he said. And I didn't want a marriage where resentment grew quietly under the surface. She swallowed. So you waited. Yes, he said. And I hate that it hurt you. I hate that I gave you a reason to doubt, she said. They stood there, facing each other. The truth laid bare between them. No longer sharp, but still raw. I don't need you to be perfect, Charlie said. I need you to be in this with me. Fully. I am, she said. But that means you don't get to be the only one with gravity. A faint smile tugged at his mouth. You've always had gravity. I just stopped orbiting, she replied. He laughed softly, then sobered. I don't want you to pull away. I'm not, she said. I'm standing still. They moved toward each other then. Not in a rush, not to erase what had been said, but to acknowledge it. Charlie rested his forehead against hers. I'm proud of you, he said. Don't be, she replied gently. Just meet me here. He nodded. I want to. They didn't resolve everything that night. There were no promises, no declarations about timelines or rings. But something fundamental shifted, the illusion of harmony replaced by something sturdier. Later, lying side by side in the dark, Charlie spoke again. I don't want to be the only one brave, he said. Sabrina turned toward him. Then don't be. She fell asleep with a quiet certainty settling into her bones. This wasn't the end. It was the moment they stopped pretending the middle was enough. Chapter 7, Choosing herself after the fight, Sabrina expected a fallout. She braced for it in small ways, hesitating before speaking, listening for tension in Charlie's voice, watching for the subtle retreat she'd learned to recognize over the years. But the fallout never came. Instead, something quieter settled between them. Not peace exactly, more like recalibration. They moved through the next week with deliberate care. They compared calendars instead of assuming. They named limits out loud. When one of them was stretched thin, the other didn't rush in to fix it. They asked what would actually help. It was unfamiliar, occasionally awkward, but it was honest in a way their relationship hadn't been before. And for the first time, Sabrina noticed something else changing. She wasn't monitoring Charlie as closely. Her task force consumed more of her attention than she'd expected. The work was challenging and energizing, the kind that demanded she show up fully or not at all. She stayed late some nights, not out of obligation but momentum, losing track of time in a way that felt almost indulgent. One evening, she came home to find Charlie already there, working on his laptop at the kitchen counter. Hey, he said, looking up. I made pasta. She smiled, pleasantly surprised. You didn't have to. I wanted to, he replied simply. They ate together, trading stories from their respective days. Sabrina talked about a decision she'd made for the task force, one that hadn't been universally popular but felt right. Were you nervous? Charlie asked. Yes, she said. But I didn't second-guess myself. He nodded, impressed. Good. Later, as they cleaned up, Charlie said, I might have to travel next month. A few days. Sabrina paused. Old instincts stirred, calculating how it would affect them, what it meant, whether it was a sign of distance. Instead, she asked, how do you feel about it? Excited, he admitted. And a little overwhelmed. She nodded. We'll plan around it. No drama. No undertones. That night, lying in bed, Sabrina realized something that startled her. She wasn't afraid. Not of losing him. Not of where this was going. For the first time since the question of the future had lodged itself in her chest, she felt grounded enough to trust herself regardless of the outcome. The shift became unmistakable when an opportunity arose that had nothing to do with Charlie at all. Her company offered her a spot at an industry conference, 3 days out of state, limited availability. It was competitive, prestigious, something she would have hesitated over before, worrying about schedules, about absence, about the unspoken cost. She accepted immediately. When she told Charlie, she didn't frame it carefully. I'm going to Chicago next month, she said, pouring coffee the next morning. Conference. He looked up. That's great. It is, she said, smiling. I'm excited. So am I, he replied. She studied him for signs of concern, of tension. Found none. Later that week, Aunt Kelly called. I hear you're busy, Kelly said, voice amused. I am, Sabrina said. In a good way. Good, Kelly replied. That usually means you're not rearranging your life to be digestible. Sabrina laughed. I think I finally stopped doing that. Kelly grew quieter. And how does that feel? Like I can breathe, Sabrina said. Like I don't need him to choose me anymore. There was a pause. And yet, Kelly prompted. And yet, Sabrina said honestly, I still want him to. Kelly smiled into the silence. That's the difference, sweetheart. Wanting, not needing. The change didn't go unnoticed. One evening, as they walked home from dinner, Charlie slowed, matching her pace exactly. You're happier, he said. She glanced at him. I am. With me? He asked, careful. With myself, she replied. And yes, with you. He considered that, then nodded. That's attractive. She laughed. Good. He stopped walking. She turned to face him, confused. I need to tell you something, he said. Her pulse quickened, but she didn't panic. I'm not there yet, he continued. Not at the finish line, but I'm closer than I've ever been. She waited, letting him speak. And it's because I don't feel like I'm responsible for your happiness anymore, he said. I feel like I get to choose you, not protect you. Her chest tightened, not painfully, but deeply. I don't want to be protected, she said softly. I want to be partnered. I know, he replied. And that's why this feels different. They resumed walking, hands brushing but not quite holding. That night, Sabrina stood alone in the bathroom, brushing her teeth, watching herself in the mirror. She looked tired, focused, alive. She thought about who she'd been at brunch weeks ago, frustrated, waiting, quietly shrinking in the hope that patience would be rewarded. She barely recognized that woman now, not because she'd hardened, but because she'd stopped asking for permission to exist fully. Whatever came next, whether Charlie chose her tomorrow, next year, or never, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She had already chosen herself, and that, she realized, was the most romantic decision she'd ever made. Chapter 8, the question he asks. The night Charlie asked the question, it didn't feel ceremonial. There were no candles, no dramatic pauses, no carefully staged moment designed to be remembered. It was an ordinary Tuesday, rain tapping softly against the windows, the hum of the dishwasher filling the quiet while Sabrina sat cross-legged on the couch, reviewing notes for her conference presentation. Charlie stood nearby, leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone with the distracted air of someone whose thoughts were elsewhere. She noticed it the way she noticed things now, not with vigilance but with awareness. You're thinking loudly, she said without looking up. He glanced over, surprised. Am I? She said. You've scrolled past the same email 3 times. He smiled faintly and set the phone down. I didn't realize it was that obvious. She closed her laptop and turned toward him. What's up? He hesitated, then pushed off the counter and sat beside her, leaving a careful inch of space between them. Not distance, respect. I've been thinking about us, he said. Sabrina felt her pulse quicken, but she didn't brace herself. She let the moment unfold. Okay, she said. He watched her closely, as if searching for signs of expectation or fear. Finding none, he continued. I've always thought about the future in terms of milestones, he said. Career steps, financial goals, the big things you're supposed to line up before you commit. She nodded. He'd said versions of this before. But lately, he went on, I've been thinking less about milestones and more about rhythm. Rhythm, she repeated. How life feels day to day, he said. Who I'm building it with, whether the balance holds when things get hard. She waited. I used to think love was enough, he said quietly. And then I realized it wasn't. Her expression softened. It's not. But I also realized, he continued, that partnership isn't something you wait to feel ready for. It's something you practice. She smiled faintly. You sound like you've been journaling. He huffed a quiet laugh. Don't ruin the moment. I won't, she promised. He took a breath. I want to ask you something, and I don't want you to hear it as pressure or expectation. Okay. What do you see when you picture your future? He asked. Not just with me. For yourself. The question was different from any he'd asked before. It wasn't where do you want us to be? It wasn't are you ready? It was open, curious, grounded. Sabrina leaned back against the couch, considering. I see a life that's full, she said slowly. Not just busy. Intentional. He nodded. I see work that challenges me, she continued. Friends I don't lose touch with. Space to grow. I see myself making decisions without needing permission. His mouth curved into a small, proud smile. And, she added, meeting his gaze, I see a partner who stands beside me. Not ahead of me, not behind me. Someone who chooses me because I show up, not because I'm easy. He exhaled, like he'd been holding something in for a long time. That's what I want too, he said. And I think we're finally speaking the same language. The quiet that followed wasn't heavy. It was steady. Charlie shifted, turning fully toward her. I don't want to rush into a proposal just to check a box, he said. But I also don't want to keep you in limbo while I figure myself out. She appreciated the honesty more than she could articulate. So here's my question, he said. Do you want to build something with me, intentionally? Not eventually. Now. Her answer came without hesitation. Yes, she said. As long as we keep choosing each other, not the idea of each other. He smiled, relief and warmth crossing his face. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. He reached for her hand, their fingers fitting together easily. Good, she said. Because I'm not interested in waiting rooms anymore. Neither am I, he replied. They didn't seal the moment with promises or timelines. They talked instead about logistics, yes, but also values. About how they handled conflict. About what support actually looked like when neither of them was at their best. It wasn't romantic in the traditional sense. It was better. Later that night, after Charlie had gone to bed, Sabrina stood by the window, watching the rain blur the city lights. She felt calm in a way she hadn't before. Not because everything was resolved, but because nothing felt deferred. She hadn't been handed certainty. She'd been invited into clarity. And she had said yes. Whatever came next, she knew it wouldn't be because she'd waited long enough or tried hard enough. It would be because they were finally building something real together in real time. Chapter 9, The Right Timing. The proposal did not come with an audience. There was no restaurant reservation made weeks in advance. No ring hidden in dessert. No moment engineered for surprise. When it happened, it felt inevitable in the best way. Like something that had been quietly assembling itself while neither of them was watching too closely. It happened on a Saturday morning, 3 weeks after Sabrina returned from Chicago. She came home energized and tired in equal measure. Her conference a success in ways she hadn't anticipated. She'd spoken on a panel without shrinking. She'd networked without apologizing. She'd said no to things that didn't serve her and yes to opportunities that did. Charlie had met her at the airport with coffee and a smile that lingered just a little longer than usual. I missed you, he'd said, simple and unguarded. I missed you too, she'd replied, meaning it without anxiety. They fell back into rhythm easily. Not the old one, where Sabrina flowed around Charlie's edges, but a new one they were still discovering. Some nights they debriefed their days in detail. Other nights they sat quietly together, each absorbed in their own world, comforted by the shared space. On that Saturday, Sabrina woke before Charlie, sunlight spilling across the bedroom in pale stripes. She lay there for a moment, listening to his steady breathing, the familiar weight of him beside her no longer something she measured herself against. She slipped out of bed and padded into the kitchen, starting coffee, opening the windows. The air smelled like rain and something new. She was halfway through slicing strawberries when Charlie appeared in the doorway, hair rumpled, eyes soft. Morning, he said. Morning, she replied. Coffee's almost ready. He leaned against the counter, watching her. Not in the way he used to, casually appreciative, but with attention that felt deliberate. You're different since you got back, he said. She smiled faintly. I know. Good different, he added quickly. She met his gaze. I figured. They ate breakfast slowly, talking about nothing urgent. About a book he'd started. About a neighborhood dog Sabrina had fallen inexplicably in love with. About whether they should finally replace the couch. After they finished, Charlie cleared the plates without comment and set them in the sink. Then he turned, drying his hands on a towel, and said, Can we go for a walk? Sabrina raised an eyebrow. It's barely 9. I know, he said. Humor me. They walked toward the small park a few blocks away, the city still quiet in that rare, early morning way. The path curved gently through trees just beginning to green, benches still damp with dew. They sat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Charlie took a breath. Not a nervous one, Sabrina realized, but a steadying one. I used to think timing was about circumstances, he said. Money. Stability. Feeling ready. She waited. But I've learned something over the past few months, he continued. Readiness isn't a feeling. It's a decision. Her pulse picked up, but she didn't interrupt. I wasn't ready before, he said. Not because of you. Because I didn't know how to stand beside someone who didn't need me to lead all the time. She turned toward him fully now. And I was afraid, he admitted. Afraid that if I chose you too soon, I'd be choosing the version of us that was comfortable, not the one that was honest. She nodded slowly. That fear wasn't wrong. No, he said, but it kept me cautious longer than I should have been. He reached into his jacket pocket, not hurriedly, not dramatically, and pulled out a small box. He didn't open it yet, just held it. Sabrina felt a swell of emotion. Not shock, not disbelief, but recognition. This isn't about a timeline, he said. And it's not about an expectation. I'm not asking because it's been long enough. She smiled, eyes bright. Good. I'm asking because I know who you are now, he continued. And because I know who I am with you. He opened the box. The ring was simple, elegant, unapologetic. Sabrina Crawford, he said, voice steady. Will you marry me? She laughed softly. Not because it was funny, but because joy sometimes needed an outlet. Yes, she said immediately. Yes. He exhaled, a sound that held relief and certainty in equal measure, and slipped the ring onto her finger. Fit perfectly. They didn't kiss right away. They just looked at each other, the moment settling gently around them. I don't need you to promise me forever in the abstract, Charlie said. I need you to keep showing up. I will, she said. As long as you do too. He smiled. Deal. They walked home hand in hand, the ring catching the light with every step. When they reached the apartment, Sabrina paused at the door. You know, she said, a few months ago, I thought this was the question I was waiting for. Charlie tilted his head. And now I know it wasn't the question, she said. It was the answer. Later that afternoon, Sabrina called her parents. Her mom cried. Her dad laughed and said something about knowing it would happen once Sabrina stopped waiting. She texted Aunt Kelly last. Sabrina, he asked. The reply came almost instantly. Kelly, of course he did. You finally arrived. Sabrina stood in the living room that evening, looking around the space that had held so many versions of her. Some tentative, some hopeful, some quietly frustrated. Charlie came up behind her, slipping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? He asked. She leaned back against him. How different everything feels. Scary different? He teased. No, she said. Solid different. He kissed her temple. That's my favorite kind. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sabrina felt something settle into place. Not the end of a journey, but the beginning of one she was finally ready to walk with intention. She hadn't been chosen because she waited patiently enough. She had been chosen because she stepped fully into herself. And that made all the difference.